It is my privilege and joy that we can finish our series about God's love and justice with this last presentation that has the subtitle, Love is the Fulfillment of the Law. In life, it is crucial to know the general structure of each element of creation. Everything is a channel and must have an entrance and an exit. And everything works through the same law, that of cause and effect, that if the channel is a channel without its own power, it must first take and then use that and pass it on. And if this is the general thing of all created things in the universe, then it is evident that God must necessarily exist as the source of all supply, as the one from which everything comes out, and also the one that finishes the circle of the universe. This also shows that God must be selfless, just as everything He has created is selfless. Everything works for the common good of the whole. So, without being selfless, how could it work in a circuit? So this is crucial to know. It makes clear how things work and how we can see if something is true or something is not true. This proves that everything in the universe is dependent on God for one's own existence, for the fulfillment of one's own task, and for the relationship between the creatures. God has put each channel in the right place so that they have the right relationship among each other. So everything in the universe is dependent on God. What does this look like specifically? Every created element, spirit or matter, cannot exist on its own. Its existence is actively sustained by God at all times. Now that brings us into a certain limit of understanding, because if we look to how great the universe is, it looks to our eyes as being infinite, even though it is not infinite. How must God be that He sustains in existence, in function, everything that He created, from the smallest piece of an atom or even smaller to the greatest complex elements that He created? This goes beyond that what we can comprehend. But this is the only way the universe can exist and function, by the active power of God that sustains everything. Only this can help us to understand also the following things. So how does God do this? He makes it through the channel of His law. The law is a channel through which the means, the power of God, is applied specifically through all the universe. I compare it with the nervous system in the human being. The nervous system connects everything together. Through the nervous system, everything is conducted. Everything is made to do something or stop doing something. But the nervous system has no power of its own. It just passes on the power that the Spirit gave into the system so that it can work. So this is why it's so important to understand that the law has no power of its own. Like the nerves have no power of their own. It is just a channel by leading the power exactly to the point you want to lead them. That's how God governs His universe. Now, within this law, God has given each element its tasks. So everything was created with a purpose, to be there to do something. And so matter fulfills its tasks without responsibility, has no influence on the execution. The power in the matter is God's. That's why in the fiery furnace, He can take away the power of the fire towards the 4 gentlemen that were walking in the fire. Because it's not the fire with its own power, but just the power of God in the fire. So He can take that power away, like He can do it with the nerves that will not do and give any impulse further. So when it comes to angels and humans, which are spirits with reason, they fulfill their task through their own thoughts and actions. So that's a little bit different. So let's look to the difference. The application when it comes to the spirit means the spirit was created in God's image and can therefore only govern himself from within. That's most important. However, the spirit is not independent. He can only function if his defined needs, love, freedom, justice, security, are satisfied. So he needs them to be able to function from within. So God gave the spirit the capacity to love, to do something. To love, like all other activities, has two parts: to take in order to give. Not like one part in which, in deception, people believe that love is just giving. No, you can never give what you didn't take before. So access to the source of love must therefore always be guaranteed, because then you cannot do anything if you have no access to take first your means in order to give them and pass them on. If he loses access to the source of love, he's no longer able to function, he must die, he's not able to love anymore. And now the question comes, how did the separation from the source of love come about in a spirit? And the separation from the source of love, resulting in evil, arose through an inner process of wanting to change one's own nature. So Lucifer and later Adam, they had an attempt. From a created being, they wanted to become a creator. From a channel, they wanted to become an origin, not a channel. This was an impossible attempt, because it cannot be. But this imaginary change, this self-deception, led to the breaking of the law. So the law determines how and where the need must be met and supplied. So you need to take from God as angels and Adam and Eve and pass it on to the environment, to those around you. That's how the law works. But now that one believes he's an origin, he does not need to take, he just gives. But he never gives for free, but he wants to receive. This is how love ceased and selfishness, egoism, took its place as a result of this self-deception. So selfishness is the result of the impossible attempt to make something from oneself and for oneself. So that's so clear that we may understand it. No one can do anything from himself and for himself. Now, let's look, what is love? What is the exercise of love? So love is an information that comes from a source of love. That means love is always dependent on a spirit-to-spirit relationship. We cannot love without a source, a person, where we have to take that information that we have to use in order to exercise at the exit love and give it on. So it contains two pieces of information. The first piece is what the source of love says or does. And the second is what the source is like and how she is doing, if she feels good, if she's like she is. And if God had remained the source of love for man, he would always have been able to satisfy his needs by taking them and living them out by passing them on. Life would have been enjoyable all the time. But unfortunately, self-deception arose. Now God is not anymore there as a love source accessible, but now the love source becomes a false one, a wrong one. It's the humans that now people live from. What the wrong source of love says or does, and what the source is like and how she's doing. That now people live from. This is what I observed in all my conversations with my patients. The focus is always on what the other does or not. So here is this young woman who one day comes home and she finds her husband doing the wrong things on the internet. He's looking to things where men should not look to. She is scared and she becomes depressed. Now she's depressed for 2 years. She continues her life with her husband, but something in her is not right. Why? Because she lives from what he does or not does. She lives like how he is and how he's doing. If a person hears suddenly that his mother is sick, he gets into stress because he lives from that mother. So, information. Through self-deception, we live from an information that comes from a human love source. And if we do that and continue that, we must destroy ourselves. Because there is no love to take from humans. What they do and not do can never satisfy us. But through this terrible deception, we just are focused always on what others do and not do. While in reality, according to the law, according to the way I was made, only that counts and matters, what I do and not do. So, love and selfishness, let's compare them. Love has maximum interest for the other, while selfishness or egoism has maximum interest in the other for me, for oneself. So you see, if love would be for the other, that person would be at the exit of my spirit. But if it's in the other, he is at the entrance. It is my love source when I have an interest in the other person. Now, since this is unknown and unconscious to us, through the way we react when things are negative, we see ourselves. And that is when we need to dominate. You see, this young lady with her husband wants to dominate him because he needs to do what she thinks is right to do. She cannot give him that freedom that he is given by God to do the evil. When we need to make fear to someone, oh, if you go away from me, I will kill myself or I will kill you, whatever, that is fear-making. That's conditioning. That's forcing the other. Or when we become angry on a person, it is because out of our selfishness, because that person determines the way we think. So let's be very clear. At the exit, we can see what is at the entrance. And that person that is there, and I take from it, and it determines my thinking, then I am in the wrong position. So what would prove that I have the persons that I say to love at the exit and not at the entrance? It will prove if I can give 100% freedom to the evildoer to do the evil. If I can respect the will of the other, even though the will is wrong. This is only possible if that person is at the exit. This is why I know that love is of divine origin. Only God can produce it, because He's totally independent on His creatures. He does not need anything from them for Himself. He existed before He created them. So He loves them, and He gave them this capacity to a spirit to live by freedom. And since He's independent, He can give freedom to the evil to exist. This, in selfishness, is not possible. Because you live from the good, it must be good that you live from. Because you have only good needs. And if someone that is evil is at the entrance of your spirit, you become evil. You cannot satisfy your need, because that's not your need to live from the information of a person that is wrong or that suffers. So selfishness also has a fake of freedom, and that is tries to be indifferent. But you cannot be indifferent to your mother or to your father or whatever happened in your life. And even when you separate, which means you become free of the other because the other you believe is toxic, you still are bound to that person. So selfishness can never satisfy the brain that needs an impulse from a free spirit. Selfishness is human origin, and it will never bring the right thing to the brain. That's why in our body, we can see if our spirit is free or not. And He does not need to give freedom to the ones that do the right, because that's normal. That's how God made us to function. But He must give freedom to those who do the wrong. This is never possible with the self-deception that I'm a God and I need to control the other's life, of course, for the good. This is why disease is the proof of the deepest evil that entered the universe, and that is enforcing the good. Having a good idea, having a good purpose, wanting something good, but for oneself, brought force into the universe. Lucifer was the first one that brought unfreedom. He was the first one that wanted to change things by force. This is why this universe that is functioning selflessly and in the spirit must function freely, cannot work except every spirit gives total freedom to those around us, because there is no one that can dominate the other one. So I'm excited and love the concept how God created things. And I'm looking forward to the time when I can exercise this divine love completely. Now, how did God react to Lucifer's final self-deception? We know that it was a process in which Lucifer came to understand that he was wrong, and he still continued. That was and remains a mystery, but what does God do? He keeps him alive because this is in His power alone. Gives him limited space to do evil. So God's love, because He's independent from Lucifer, gives him space to do evil. If evil is revealed as evil, because it came under the cover of good, it can be removed with the agreement of everyone in the universe, because we have seen there is no coexistence between good and evil, with love and selfishness. So how did God react to man's self-deception? The same way, God keeps him alive because this is in His power alone. No one can take his life because it's God's. And God has a way out of self-deception for him. Why? Because He did not exhaust all means that could reach the human's reason. This is why only when a man rejects all of God's means does his self-deception become final. And thus this leads to his inexistence at the end of the cosmic conflict, together with Satan, when everything is removed. So God made a way out. But if the means are exhausted, like they were exhausted in Lucifer, there is no way back. Now let us look to the omnipotence of God, on what it is based, so that we can understand how everything works. So each element is actively sustained at all times by God. We have discussed this before, we made it clear. This means that the existence and function of any element is directly dependent on God. It is directly dependent on how God sustains it in order to be able to function. And no one can penetrate God's sphere of action. And when we saw this first in this series, we remembered that we read the words of Deuteronomy 32:39 from the Song of Moses and the Lamb, and it is written there so: "See now that I, even I, am He, and there is no God with me. So there is no other God. There's no other power that keeps everything going, or by which power everything goes going, because God is not a power. He makes the power. I kill and I make alive. So who has life in his hand? I wound and I heal. So here it's his power. And it says, neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. So that's the omnipotence of God. That is his all power that he has. There is more to it. What the Spirit thinks inside, what intentions he harbors, what decisions he makes, is not under God's control. If it would have been under God's control, self-deception and sin as a result could have never arose. However, everything that the Spirit does to the outside world, so everything that he does, is subject to God's will. Because without God's consent, no one can do evil, because he has no power of his own. So this is where we have to understand, even though we are free to think what we want, we are not free to do what we want, because we're dependent on God's power to do that what came into our minds. So according to the way everything works in the universe, God can intervene to limit evil and redeem man. This intervention, this extraordinary intervention, is called the providence of God. God knew in his pre-knowledge that something would happen, would come out. That's why he made a plan that entered into action in the moment the error came up in the universe. So the providence of God shows his intervention to save the universe and mankind after the error had aroused. If the error would never have aroused, there would be no need for God's special intervention to save the universe and mankind. Now, God's providence shows his intervention in favor of all beings. He allows evil with restrictions so that it can reveal itself. It's for the good of the whole that he intervenes. And his providence shows that by his calculation of how long it takes for evil to reveal itself as such. And so he set the 6,000 years and the 7,000 years, or another 1,000 years for the judgment, to make everything clear for every spirit with reason. So he knew how much it would take of time. That's his providence. It's his knowledge, that is special intervention. And part of the providence of God is God's mercy. It's grace. The grace of God towards man is possible because the law is only a channel for his power. He can direct his power through the law as he wishes, giving or withdrawing it. So grace shows us it postpones the effect in order to give a way out for those who fell under the self-deception. Grace does not change the law. Grace has planned a way in which he can redeem man without changing the law, just because God is in control of the power and not the law. Grace makes a way out in cooperation between the Son of God and his Father God. So both of them make salvation. They accomplish it together and offer that, of course, to man. So the self-deceived human has been given an extraordinary choice to take the way out. This means that grace gives us a choice that was not anymore available for us. This is an extraordinary choice that we can get out from death to life. It's not something that was with us from the beginning. We lost our life. We lost and came into death. So now this extraordinary choice is just the act of God's mercy and grace. And grace proves that his righteousness is confirmed by the righteousness of the redeemed humans, because His grace has brought the effect that it had to do to redeem humans that exercise God's righteousness in their own lives. Now, we have seen that Job proves evil against good, injustice against justice, has no chance. Why? Even the greatest suffering cannot conquer love. Job was put into a great suffering. Not only that he lost everything, that was not his issue, but that he lost, so to say, his connection to God. He did not find God anymore when he got sick. I mean, when the devil made him sick on his skin. But everything that the devil tried on Job was without success. This was a simple man who lived the love of God and fulfilled God's righteousness. And in his life, it is proved that man's righteousness will confirm God's righteousness. A simple man breaks the power of the deceiver. He has no way to seduce him, to not allow the evil to exist. He has no power to make him to do the wrong. He remains in righteousness because he remains in the exercise of love. This is the case with Jesus. Jesus shows that whatever was done unto him wrongly by the devil and by those who were instigated by him, he was not able to be conquered. He remained conqueror because love, freedom, is greater than selfishness and captivity. So, understanding all this together will help us to understand that in our lives as well, God's righteousness must be proved by us exercising God's love. Because we gave the definition. According to the law, love is the fulfillment of righteousness, the fulfillment of the law. And if that is so, then he who exercises God's love is righteous. The only way to be unrighteous is to not exercise God's love. But for this you need to be separated from God. Job, through God's grace, was reconnected, and no one could separate him from them. So, when each human has made their final choice, the grace of God ceases, because grace is just for a time. It's not forever, because there must come an end to the evil, because we have seen it cannot coexist with good. When grace ceases, it is followed by the judgment to reveal what was in every human's heart. That's why it takes for God to show to the redeemed 1,000 years to make them clear why was done the judgment in that way. Those who remain in error will lose their existence in the lake of fire at the end of the judgment. This also removes evil forever, because it only existed inside of the deceived spirit. It cannot exist outside of a deceived spirit. And when they are losing their existence, evil ceases to be as well. But not only the ceasing of evil is put in the lake of fire, but also the consequences of evil that destroyed the earth and death as the ultimate enemy is also removed in that lake of fire. The earth is being created anew. The redeemed are integrated into the circuit of the universe because they unite the love and justice of God within themselves. And after the earth has been restored and everything is working normally again, God's providence ceases as well. Yes, there will be never again a situation in which He has to intervene in the course of the universe that He made that everything should function. His intervention was just needed because of the deception that arose and evil by it. Never again will he have to intervene in the course of the universe, because the re-emergence of the error is no longer possible. What a beautiful perspective of God's love and righteousness, of that what will be forever and never will change. That is love and justice of God. Now, I hope that you are motivated, like I am, to live this love, so that we can prove to the world one day that we are righteous, that we have implemented God's righteousness in our lives. And when we are exposed, so to say, to the devil, like Job was, nothing can move us, because we are in love. We exercise God's love. We allow 100% freedom to the evildoer to do it to ourselves. This is only possible if there is a new life in us, if we have understood by faith how to co-work with the Spirit of God to be able to show this love, because it will be proven when every force that the devil is given to will be exercised on us, and we will not be moved, because our hearts are connected to the Spirit of God. And by this, we are the most loving people that God has on earth. They allow the evil to be done to ourselves. That proves that we are in God's love and that we are righteous in the righteousness of God. I desire this love, and I desire to be one day fully in this love. That means to be righteous. I hope you want the same. Amen.